What is happening, guys? Welcome back to Red Beard's Garage, and today we're getting back on the Yamaha YZ450 chassis. So this was a Yerf Dog go-kart, and we highly modified it. In the last episode, you saw us do this double A-arm front suspension. We got all the tabs fully welded out. We got the A-arms welded out. We still need to plate the upper A-arms. We're going to do some dimple dyed 14 gauge steel on these uppers. And a lot of people is concerned, not a lot, but a few people is concerned about the upper A-arm being so short or like skinny and close together. They were saying that the frame's going to be weak where the tabs are at and things like that. I fully think that it's going to be strong enough the way it is. Your lower A-arm takes the bulk of the hit when you're jumping and stuff. And of course, the only worries is a front end impact. If you was to hit this against a rock or whatever, it could bend those tabs. But I think it's going to be plenty strong. I'm not really worried about it, but only time will tell. When we get this thing off the chassis table, we'll start beating on it and see if they bend, and we can see who's right and who's wrong. I like to just play with different styles of A-arms, and that's the reason we did that. But today's episode, we're going to be doing the steering setup. We're going to mount the steering rack. We got a Challenger X steering rack from Go Power Sports, and we got their whole steering set up. It's basically a steering wheel, a knuckle, and even the little steering wheel adapter. So we're going to get all that. We're probably going to have to, of course, lengthen the steering knuckle to make it reach where the steering wheel is going to be at, of course. But all this stuff is off of 150cc go-karts, so it works awesome on our buggies. We've been using the steering racks forever. They're compact and they have a lot of angle out of them, a lot of steering travel, so that's what we're going to be installing. But before we get into the steering, I'm going to go ahead and mount the shocks on the front. And the reason I want to do this is because it's already on the table and ready to go. We're going to pull the springs off the shocks and mount them so the travel being flat is completely on the bump stops. We won't ever get into the frame with that upper A-arm because it's really close with the way this chassis is built. So what we're using is 150cc rear shocks on the front of this buggy, and we're going to use 300cc rear shocks on the rear. As you can see on screen, the 300cc are way bigger and way beefier than the rear shocks that's on a 150. So that's what we're going to go with. Rear shocks on both, but 150 rear shocks on the front, 300s on the back. So I got it set up in the vise. We're going to pull the spring off, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with mounting this shock. So let's get into it. Okay, so what I've done is I have the Go Power Sports shock with the spring off of it. This is the normal extended length. So you can see we get a few inches of travel out of it, probably around 3 total. So if you think about it, if it's getting that 3 inches of travel and the shock's mounted here, it's going to be more at the spindle. So what I'm going to do is take this and make sure, because of the spring being around 2 inches, I'm going to make sure I leave enough room around the A-arms, and we're going to have to build a weird tab that comes up in this area, kind of off this front. So I'm going to get this tacked on and just make sure I'm leaving enough room. And we're just guesstimating where. There's only really one spot to put this shock on this chassis. So worst case scenario, this is a standard eye length for a lot of go-karts and ATVs. So worst case scenario, if these shocks are too stiff or too soft, I can probably get a little stiffer one offline, but I'm hoping this will do good. So we'll get these tacked on both sides. And I added this plate that you guys haven't seen. I'm going to cap it off with a piece of 3/16 flat stock in the back to make that strong after we get this done. So let's get this shock mounted. Black butter. We're putting some 1/8" plate in here so our pedals have a good mounting point, because our floor will be diamond plate aluminum for grip, maximum grip.
It's coming together though, little by little.
Yeah, so we're about to put the main steering hoop in. Then we can mount our rack and run our rod, our steering shaft down to the rack. Then we can worry about tie rods. Button in rear shock tabs and we can set it on the floor. So this is the Challenger X steering rack. And first thing I have to do, because it has ball joints on the end, and these ball joints is going to limit my travel. That's all they have, which isn't horrible, but we're gonna make some C's for this to use, and this is smaller. I want to use 1/2 inch just to be more aggressive. We'll be able to slide the boots off and reuse them. I'm gonna take off this jam nut. Again, we'll put this back on after everything's done. And you have a flat spot on this ball joint. You can see it has a stop to help limit the steering rack. There's nothing wrong with these ball joints. They're actually decent quality. I don't think I'm going to be able to use them because of, you know, how much it's going to limit my downward travel. But I do keep these for who knows what. Okay, so we made this steering bracket and it basically goes in the chassis upside down like that and points the rack back. The only problem is I didn't make these ears long enough. It's just something you don't know till you try it. So what is happening, if you don't get your steering rack at the right height, you basically will run into your A-arms if you're at maximum lock, left or right, and maximum drop. So you have to put it, I like to put the steering rack dead center of the two A-arms because you're at the perfect center point for down travel and up travel. And that was a problem we had when we turned the steering rack all the way to one side. We would run into the upper A-arm because of this being so short, which sucks because I took so much time to make this thing. But now that we have this Avid CNC, this is a 4x4 plasma table with a water bed. Avid CNC reached out to us and we was so excited to get this thing. They gave us a Hypertherm 65 sink. This is one of the best plasma cutters on the market. And I'm telling you guys, this whole table, we got a video coming out of building this thing. It's a full kit. You get it in a bunch of boxes and put it together. It took me and a buddy about 6 hours to put it together, 6 or 7 hours, and it was actually really fun and really easy to install everything. Like, everything was super smooth. The instructions are great. We have our laptop mounted on a wall mount there, and Harbor Freight sent us, if you see that white box up there, that is a air dryer that basically ACs the air coming in and it forces the moisture to drop out of it. So I only normally run that if I'm doing more than like cutting these few brackets. I'm not going to run it because it does make it sounds like an AC unit running. I wish there was a way to put that somewhere else where I don't hear it, because there's more noises than we want to have in the shop. But this whole setup is freaking amazing. You can see I've been cutting a ton of stuff. So I've got the software loaded up. I'm going to make sure everything is good. We'll get to cutting. So here's my revised steering rack mount. Basically, I'm using 1 inch by 2 inch rectangle tubing, and it's 3/16 thick wall, maybe. And I made it 1 inch taller, and I'm bottom mounting it. Also messed up because I was mounting it upside down, and we've done this once or twice. You forget to see what way it's going to turn. So if we mount this upside down, steering would be opposite. You would want to mount this upside down if it was in front of the spindles. But since we're behind the spindles, you got to mount it like this to have the right steering. So I'm just bottom mounting it. We've notched this plate. You guys seen that? We got this all mounted and it's super clean. There's those heim joint brackets we made. We'll put a jam nut on the back of this. I TIG welded a nut on the inside so this threads on. Then I'll use a jam nut to lock these in place, and then we'll have boots on there and stuff too. So now I can knock this plate down in place. I've already seen where I want to put it, get it tacked in, and then we can mount the rack in and start building our tabs for the spindles. And we're actually going to step these down. These are 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch heim joint with 1/2 inch high misalignment spacers. Remember, we have a discount code for heim joints and high misalignment spacers in the video's description. QS Components has been a supporter of the channel for a long time, and they're great products. But I found some 3/8 adapters that drop down a 3/4 down to 3/8. So what I can do is still use those spindles, but make some adapters that weld in there that adapt the hole down to 3/8 instead of 1/2 inch, and that'll give me about 5 to 7 degrees more steering, because someone was saying that's not enough steering, and it's not. That's why I don't like running my heim joints this way. So we'll get even more. This will be about here, which is plenty. So yeah, get off my back. And then I am going to end up adding some lock collars to this that lock and weld to this part that support the body even more. And then these are super strong. As you can see, that fitment sets right down. I made that in the CAD software, so it sets down super flush. It's fully encapsulated all the way around. I love that freaking Avid CNC table. Holy butt, is it fun. So I took a piece of 1 inch tube and I have it cut at 11 3/4. I have my bungs in it. I'm going to try out this style heim joint. This is for tie rod ends. You get quite a bit of angle out of it, but it's still strong. I'll just make sure my tab is really strong. Like, I'm going to do a box tab since it's a single shear, meaning there's only one tab going to be holding it. There's not a double tab. So what I'll do is when I make this, I'll make it boxed in on the bottom side, so they're super strong. I'm actually going to box the rear tabs. So now I got to find out. So I got to put this A-arm dead flat, and then when I mount this tie rod, I need it dead flat. That's how you don't get any bump steer. Another way you don't get bump steer is, well, I say bump steer, with the tie rod being completely as level as your A-arms, you won't get the tire turning through travel. You know, like that's what our very first A-arm set did. Bump steer is when you hit a bump with the left-hand tire and the steering wheel wants to turn to the left. You get rid of that with kingpin angle. Basically, if you drew a line, imaginary line through your heim joint from your upper and lower A-arm, it needs to hit about a quarter. Like if the tire's sitting on the ground and the tire's 10 inches wide, you'd want it to hit about 2.5 inches inside to half. Basically, you want that invisible line to hit where your tire's going to meet the asphalt a quarter to half inside of that. Does that make any sense? Of your scrub radius, because that's going to keep, that's why Yerf dogs and stuff, they got straight up and down. If you drew a line through them, they're straight up and down, and you're going to get bump steer. That's, we figured this out. So now I'm going to design a tab up in Shaper 3D, get it cut, and we can get this mounted. And I can TIG weld this heim joint, or this tie rod out. Welded up our steering this is our bearing flange. So I'm gonna weld both sides of it, and then we can get it welded to our hoop and put our hoop in the chassis.
That looks pretty dang close. You want to measure? You got the tape measure on your side, don't you?
Okay. I mean, I think that feels
just give him more tap on his side.
Yeah. That feels real nice. Our seat will be 1 inch down lower because we're going to take the sliders off. I don't see anybody needing to slide this seat in this chassis because of how you're in this. I think we should triangulate 2 bars to this because the fact that you only have one thing holding this.
Yeah.
Just 2 Slainer boys or something. We'll figure out something. Eyebrow bar is in. All right, so we have everything mounted up, and when I showed you guys the shocks earlier in the video, I actually had the wrong shocks on the Buggy. So this was the correct shock that I took the spring off of, but the difference is the shocks that I mounted up on the front end. This shock is 1 inch shorter than this shock. So I actually don't have this spring. I can't find it anywhere. I don't know where it's at. But this basically is our test shock for these 14.5 inch shocks from Go Power Sports. And some reason I'd got 13.5. So you can see the height difference if we run the 14.5s versus the 13.5. So this will be the ones that we run. Last thing that we have to do, and we're not going to do it in this video, we'll just put it at the first and next video, is we have to finish hooking up the steering wheel setup. So with the steering, our last thing is to put this shaft in. You see me cut the Go Power Sports steering shaft apart. This is basically called 3/4 inch double D shaft. It's made so you don't have to have a key. And you can see the Go Power Sports one has a female and a male portion. So this can extend and adjust about 3 inches or so. But it's too short, of course, to reach where we need it to go. So what I did was I cut the double D shaft off of the Go Power Sports knuckle. And on Amazon you can I buy them in 60 inch pieces, so 5 foot pieces of this double D shaft. And it'll sleeve right into the Go Power Sports female portion down here. Come on, baby. I need to deburr that. And then once I open up this end, because they had machined down the double D shaft from the factory to 1/2 inch. Once I drill this out to 3/4 inch, I can sleeve it in there and weld it. So once I have that heim joint up there drilled out, this will sleeve in it and weld it, and then this will be welded here as a secondary support. It's just a 3/4 inch heim joint. So we'll do that the first of next episode, because I have to go get a 3/4 inch heim joint to drill out that heim joint. 3/4 inch drill bit, because I do not have a good one to drill this out. I tried with mine, it was awful. So we have everything. On the next episode we'll be taking this off the quantum Sigmund table and putting the rear shocks on it and letting it sit on the ground and finally clean off my weld table. We have a new weld table coming and I'm super pumped about it. We'll be able to build chassis even longer. We'll make a freaking limo. But everything turned out good. I like the way the steering hoop looks. I like having that eyebrow in there. It makes it look 1,000 times better. We're rolling some 1 1/4 tubing to make like a little bit of a dome up there, so your helmet don't ever have any clearance issues. But yeah, let me know what you think about this front end setup. Heim joints are all on. You got to fully weld everything, but other than that, and we're working on this a lot over the next few weeks now that we have the plasma table running. Massive shout out to Avid for hooking us up with that. Thing's a life changer. But make sure to check out the links in the video description for all these parts. Like I said, you can get all these shocks, steering components at Go Power Sports, heim joints from QS Components. We do have a discount code for QS Components, so check them out. And thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think of the Buggy. We love you guys, and God bless.